right, let me see if I can get through this without boring you too much. This first picture here is shortly after I discovered the guitar. My oldest daughter was 4, my youngest daughter was 2, and that's me sitting on the couch there just enjoying the guitar. Within 6 months, I had my first electric guitar and I was playing with the first Latin band. And we would play in the garage on Hensley Street in San Bruno. And back in those days, we didn't have much money, man. We used broom poles for our mic stands, but that's where we practiced that. Later on, I got together with my brother, who's a heavy influence in my early music career. As I slowly developed, skills and got toys together. This is me in Rancho Cordova, California. Always had a guitar with me. This is San Bruno. And this is the Conca Religious Center in San Francisco. I'll get back to that. And this is Fogtown, the rock band that I was telling you about. That's me in the middle. To the left is our drummer. To the next one is our bassist. Me is the rhythm guitar, lead guitar, and singer. This was a flyer for the Boathouse that I told you that we played. We played that quite often. And Tony was a wild man. This guy, you want to talk about a hothead, boy. This guy would jam those drums. We played quite often at the Boathouse, and we won 1 year, and after that we broke up. I also had a tenor playing with Haven, a spiritual Sufi group. My brother belonged to a Sufi group up on Bernal Heights, and they had this place called the Kanka where they would hold celebrations. And the Sufis, their whole mythology revolves around music. And so they were a very musical group. There we are again. We played a lot of music up there. It was great. And we actually played outdoors. My brother had a nice house up on the hill with a nice open parking lot area right there. There it is, right there. And we would have fires, and the Sufis would come down, and we would play music, and we'd party and dance and play. It was just a wonderful time up on the hill. That's B of Planeteer. They're a well-known group out of Hawaii. And there's me and my brother's house. And as I got older, I got pudgy and skinny and pudgy till I had a heart attack and a stroke, and finally I'm skinny now for the rest of my life, I hope. And that was the Castro Valley studio there. This was the Hayward studio here. This was also the Hayward studio. Um, And this is a friend of mine who lived on Treasure Island. Me and my brother were visiting him. My brother passed away. That's him on the left there. Of course, that's my favorite guitar, my baby, that I've had my entire life. And this is my Alameda studio. When I moved to Alameda, I really discovered studio, working in a studio, and controlling all levels of your own music. And so I spent a lot of time, putting pieces together all alone. And this is my art studio. Toyo was an artist as well. I learned commercial art and a lot of different mediums: watercolor, oil, acrylic, pen and ink. And this next section, I'm going to show you this nice illustration that I wrote, that I made here.
All right, so this is an original illustration that I penned. Finished this one in 1987. It's the Carson House up in Eureka, most photographed house in the world. This was a project that I worked on. This is pen and ink with cobblestone cardboard. Instead of the regular illustration board, this has cobblestone, kind of a cobblestone texture. But I've had this thing for a long time, and I recently used this for part of the cover of a book that I have publishing. I had to change a little bit. The original photograph this was taken from was about a quarter of the size of this. And in our commercial art classes, we're taught how to grid that and then make a double-sized grid or a double-side or a grid that's 4 times as large. And you start drawing from the grid that you're looking at. And that's how we got this. So it's all done by hand, with, of course, rulers and help. And ellipses that help with the curves, but all done by hand. The first stage was gridding the original, and then creating the same grid on a larger canvas, but each grid being twice as big or more times as big, as long as it's an equal uh, measurement. And you get and as you draw that, it comes into fruition. But anyway, the reason I'm taping this is because this is an original piece of art. She's been displaying interest in wanting to own this piece, but I'm not going to sell it to her. So this is just sitting up in storage all these years, and so I'm going to give it to her. So this is going to be for my friend, and yeah, the piece I did. Let me just get a little zoom in here, see some of the detail. I'm going to get out of the way. It took 6 months to draw this, from pencil to overlaying it with ink using rapidograph ink. Fine pointed artist's instrument. Skill signature. R. Almodovar, 187. Yeah, I was actually looking for a project to work on and decided I wanted to choose Victorians. So I went to the library. This was years ago, over 30 years ago, maybe 40 years ago. And pulled the picture out of a book in the library. This is the Carson House in Eureka, California, the most photographed house in the world. Absolutely beautiful Victorian, which I also use as an inspiration for my book cover. Fortunately, there's copyright laws that may prohibit me from using this, even though it's my creation based on a photograph. Now, supposedly the copyright laws end after 30 years. Taken from a book that had a photograph in it, but more than 30 years ago. So there's a debate there. But the point is, in order to avoid all of that, instead of using this exact illustration, what I did is I photoshopped it to make it look like it's a completely different Victorian with the same kind of features, but altered enough so that I don't think that I'll be sued for copyright infringement when you see the book cover. Because this whole thing is gone here, doesn't exist in the one that I have. This tower is actually sitting in between two split images that I created when I photoshopped this piece. I photoshopped it right down the middle here. I photoshopped it right down the middle here, and then mirrored the image so it ended up with this on both sides. And then I moved this tower to the center of it, and I got rid of this whole thing there and put a tree there. And took out this cowling here and just left the stairs. So I'm hoping that that's enough so that they'll leave me alone. One of the problems about creating illustrations is those copyright laws. You can create it, you can probably sell it to somebody, but you can't use it in advertising or to make money. Now I know this is more than 30 years old. When I looked at the original photograph while I was sitting in the library, it was already that old. The book, came out a long time ago.
And here's a sample of the final rendition of that piece of work actually used in the book cover. So you can clearly see that there's very, very similar because it was cut up from the same illustration, but I moved shit around and added a tree on the left to make it different so that they can't say, hey, that's obviously the Carson house and you copied it and you can't use it. So far, the book's been on Amazon for a little over a year, and I haven't gotten you know, any hits. So I mean, any negative inquiries regarding the artwork. So that is the story of that piece. Okay, the only explanation that I have is every aspiring artist or musician has to have a day job. And this was my day job. I was actually a fire sprinkler installer. And so maybe those stories are based on real events.